Welcome to week 9. I'm glad that you've made it back for another week. This unit focuses on hip hop as a cultural movement. Hip hop is more than a dance style. It is a cultural movement born in the Bronx, New York, in the 1970s from Black and Latinx communities. This development was responding to structural neglect, economic deinvestment, racial marginalization, and urban transformation. This unit situates hip hop not simply as choreography, but as spatial, political, and community-based practice shaped by resistance, creativity, and various modems of circulation. By the end of this module, students will be able to define hip-hop as a cultural movement rooted in place, community, and resistance, analyze how hip-hop dance engages space, identity, and cultural commentary, critically assesses commercialization and mainstream appropriation of hip-hop forms. Let's start with the birth of hip-hop. In the 1970s, the Bronx experienced severe urban decline due to reduced public funding, neglected infrastructure, and landlord abandonment. Fires, housing loss, shrinking city services destabilized communities. The environment of scarcity and marginalization shaped the social conditions in which hip-hop emerged. As middle-class white residents moved to the suburbs, tax revenue and economic investment left with them. The Bronx became increasingly segregated and under-resourced. With limited institutional support, young people created their own cultural spaces and forms of expression. Street gangs were common in the Bronx, but by the mid-1970s, many began shifting from territorial violence towards organized community identity. Groups evolved into creative collectives focused on music, dance, and art. This transformation helped redirect competitive energy into artistic innovation. With few recreational resources, youth organized block parties in parks and community centers. DJs used sound systems powered by street electricity to bring neighborhoods together. These gatherings became laboratories for experimentation, dance battles, and musical innovation. So let's talk about some key historical figures for hip-hop. DJ Kool Herc introduced the use of breakbeats, which is isolating and looping the instrumental percussion sections of funk records to extend the moments dancers love the most. This laid the foundation for hip-hop and DJ culture for breakdancing. Africa founded the Universal Zulu Nation, transforming gang networks into cultural movement created on peace, unity, and creative expression, which helped define hip-hop as a global culture, not just as a music style. Last, we have Grandmaster Flash, who advanced turntablism with technical innovations like backspinning, quick mixing, and cueing, turning the DJ into a virtuoso performer rather than just a record player. In hip-hop, there are 5 main elements: DJing, MCing, breaking, graffiti, and knowledge. DJing is the musical foundation of hip-hop. DJs manipulate records using turntables to isolate breakbeats, loop rhythms, mix tracks, and create new soundscapes. Early pioneers turned record players into instruments, transforming parties into creative laboratories. DJing represents innovation, rhythm, and control of sonic environment. MCing or rapping began as spoken hype over DJ beats and evolved into rhythmic storytelling. MCs use rhythm, wordplay, and flow to narrate lived experiences, critique social conditions, and assert identity. MCing centers voices, language, and lyrical expression within hip-hop culture. Breaking, or b-boying, or b-girling is the dance form of hip-hop, emerging at Bronx block parties. It features footwork, freezes, power moves, and improvisation performed to breakbeats. Breaking channels competition into embodied expression, turning street battles into artistic performance. Next, we have graffiti. Graffiti is hip-hop's visual art form. Writers use public space, trains, walls, buildings to assert presence, identity, and territorial visibility. It forms neglected urban environments into sites of creativity, expression, and political statement. Last, knowledge, which is often called the 5th element. Knowledge refers to awareness of hip-hop's history, social context, and political roots. It emphasizes community responsibility, cultural respect, and understanding hip-hop as more than entertainment, but as movement shaped by struggle and resistance. Now, why do you think knowledge is considered an element? What does that suggest about hip hop as more than entertainment? Well, knowledge may be considered an element of hip hop because the culture was never meant to be only about performance. It was meant to be about awareness, survival, and self definition. Hip hop emerged in conditions of urban deinvestment, racial inequity, and economic abandonment. For early practitioners, understanding those conditions and understanding one's history within them was essential. Knowledge emphasized knowing where the culture comes from, who created it, and what struggles shaped it. It calls for cultural responsibility and respect for lineage. Having a shared sense of understanding the roots of knowledge of hip hop is not only important for self expression and style, but also influencing the way dancers interact and collaborate with others in shared spaces, such as the cypher. The cypher is a circular formation where dancers, MCs, or freestylers take turns entering the circle to perform. The circle creates community. In breaking, the cypher encourages improvisation, builds collective energy, reinforces respect and turn-taking, and creates a space for call and response. The circle reflects African diasporic performance traditions where participation and audience are fluid rather than separated. A battle is a competitive exchange between dancers where each respond to the other's movement in real time. Battles are not random, they are structured conversations through movement. Battles transform conflict into artistic competition, which rewards originality, musicality, and control, and replace territorial violence with creative rivalry. The battle format helped shift the Bronx gang competition into cultural performance. When we think about different contexts of hip hop, we can compare street versus stage. Street breaking happens in ciphers, block parties, and informal spaces. It prioritizes improvisation, spontaneity, and community interaction. While stage breaking is often theatrical or in a competition setting, it is often choreographed, adjusted for audience visibility, and structured for judges and spectacle. When breaking moves from street to stage, elements may shift. It is less improvisational, more polished and uniform, and clear separation between the performer and the audience. This tension raises questions about authenticity, commercialization, and institutionalization. For floorwork and proximity to the ground, breaking is known for its strong relationship to the floor. Footwork, freezes, spins, and power moves often happen low to the ground. This proximity reflects athleticism, control, demonstrates strength and balance, and creates dynamic contrast between levels. Culturally, the grounded nature of breaking can also be linked to African diasporic aesthetics and emphasize rhythm through the entire body, not just in an upright posture. It distinguishes breaking from many Eurocentric theatrical dance traditions that prioritize vertical and lift. Clearly, the skills and mindsets required for successful hip-hop reflect its lively and passionate nature. Hip-hop exists not only as a form of expression, but as a means for making bold statements to societal forms of oppression. Hip-hop emerged as resistance. It emerged as a response to state neglect, a reclaiming of public space, and as a youth-led cultural system. In the context of hip-hop, cultural resistance refers to the ways marginalized communities use creative expression to challenge, survive, and push back against structural inequity and social exclusion. Rather than resisting only through formal political protest, hip-hop artists resisted through music, dance, style, language, and spatial practices that assert visibility, dignity, and community in the face of state of neglect over policing. Cultural resistance here means transforming abandoned spaces into stages, turning limited resources into innovation, and creating alternate systems of value when dominant institutions fail to recognize or support youth of color. It is resistance enacted through culture itself, through sound, movement, and collective identity. While we've already introduced the cypher, battling, street versus stage, and floor work, we can dive in a little deeper. The cypher as a democratic space refers to the cypher as a circle formation where participants take turns dancing, rapping, or expressing themselves in the center. It functions as a democratic space because authority is not assigned by institutions, but earned through participation, skill, and respect. Everyone in the circle witnesses, responds, and contributes to the energy. The structure reinforces community, accountability, and collective recognition rather than top-down control. Call and response is a communicative structure rooted in African diasporic traditions where one person, the caller, initiates a phrase, movement, or rhythm, and then the other, the response, answers it. In hip-hop, this appears in MC crowd exchange, DJ dancer interaction, and battle formats. It emphasizes participation over passive consumption and reinforces that culture is co-created in real time. Improvisation hip-hop is not random, it's responsive. Dancers, DJs, and MCs react to the beat, the crowd, and each other. This makes improvisation a form of dialogue, a conversation through rhythm and movement. Each choice builds on what came before, demonstrating listening, timing, and relational awareness. It reflects hip-hop's foundation in collective exchange rather than individual isolation. Hip-hop is not only a cultural movement. It is a way of embodying identity. From its origins, hip-hop provided Black and Latinx youth a space to assert racial identity with pride in a society that often criminalized or marginalized them. Through movement, participants claim visibility and self-definition. The body becomes political. Posture, gestures, rhythm, and spatial presence communicates confidence, resistance, and belonging. Hip-hop also becomes a site where masculinity and femininity are negotiated rather than fixed. Early hip-hop often amplified hypermasculinity in its performances. Toughness, dominance, control of space, shaped by both street survival and media expectations. At the same time, women in hip-hop are continually challenged and reshape these norms, asserting power, sexuality, and authority over their own terms. Breaking, emceeing, and street style become arenas where gender is performed, contested, and redefined. Style in hip-hop functions as self-definition. Clothing, hair, sneakers, and accessories are not superficial. They signal affiliation, neighborhood, musical tastes, and political stance. Fashion operates as coded communication. Oversized silhouettes, athletic wear, luxury brands, DIY customizations, and sneaker culture all communicate status, resistance, aspiration, or critique. In contexts where economic power was limited, style became the visible language of agency. So, how did hip-hop move from the street to stage? When hip-hop entered heavy rotation on MTV, it moved from localized street culture to national and globally visible. Music videos standardized certain aesthetics, fashion, choreography, masculinity, luxury imaging, shaping how audiences understood authentic hip-hop. While this expanded opportunities and economic mobility for artists, it also filtered hip-hop through corporate media logistics, privileging marketable images over community-based origins. As hip-hop grew commercially, brands recognized its power. Athletic companies, beverage brands, and luxury labels partnered with artists and crews, turning style and street credibility into a marketing tool. This created new financial pathways, but also shifted hip-hop into consumer culture, where resistance and rebellion could be commodified. The question became, when corporations profit from hip-hop, who maintains control over its meanings? As hip-hop entered studios and universities, it became codified into teachable technique, meeting set vocabulary, class structures, choreography combinations, and skill progressions. While this institutionalized, preserved, and legitimized the form in new spaces, it also risked flattening improvisation, battle culture, and community context. What began as a cipher-based, peer-led practice became structured within mirrors, tuition, models, and recital formats. Televised competition and studio competition circuits further standardized hip-hop aesthetics. Precision, synchronization, and spectacle often became prioritized over freestyle, groove, and social context. These circuits expanded access and professionalization. But also shifted evaluation criteria towards judges and scoring systems rather than community recognition. Hip-hop moved from street validation to institutional validation. As hip-hop gained mainstream popularity, questions of appropriation and dilution became central. When a culture created by marginalized communities becomes widely consumed, it can be adopted without honoring its origins or lived realities. This is where several key concepts help us analyze what's happening. Cultural appropriation occurs when elements of culture, movement, fashion, language, aesthetics are taken by members of dominant groups without acknowledgement, respect, or accountability to their originating community. In hip-hop, this can look like adopting style or dance vocabulary while ignoring the racialized history and structural conditions that produced it. Commodification refers to turning cultural expression into a product for sale. Hip-hop's resistance, style, and sound have been packaged into marketable goods, from sneakers to choreography to urban branding. When culture becomes commodity, profit often shifts away from originators towards corporations. Decontextualization happens when hip-hop forms are removed from the social, political, or geographic contexts that give them meaning. For example, teaching hip-hop choreography in a studio without discussing its roots in the Bronx can strip away its connection to state neglect, racial identity, and community resistance. Respectability in politics involve reshaping or sanitizing cultural expression to make it more acceptable to dominant institutions. In hip-hop, this can mean privileging clean or palatable versions of the culture while labeling other expressions as dangerous, inappropriate, or unprofessional. This often reinforces racial and class hierarchies. So what happens when hip-hop leaves its original communities? Who profits, what is lost or transformed? Can commercialization coexist with authenticity? Hip-hop began as a localized response to a specific condition in the Bronx, yet the very elements that grounded it in place, rhythm, style, improvisation, resistance, also made hip-hop portable. As media migrated and technology carried hip-hop across borders, it did not simply replicate itself, it adapted. In each new context, communities translate hip-hop through their own political struggle, racial histories, and cultural traditions. The question is no longer just how hip-hop resists in the USA, but how its global circulation reshapes what resistance looks like. In France, hip-hop became a powerful voice for immigrant and North African communities, particularly in suburban housing projects. French rap and street dance have addressed racism, police violence, unemployment, and national identity. Like in the Bronx, hip-hop in France functions as a language of resistance, articulating what it means to live as a margin of the state. In South Korea, hip-hop gained prominence through underground rap scenes before becoming highly visible in K-pop and television competitions. While some artists use hip-hop to critique social pressure and inequality, the form is also deeply commercialized. This context highlights tension between global Black cultural roots and local adaptation, raising questions about appropriation, translation, and authenticity. Across Latin America, including Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Colombia, hip-hop has become a tool for political activism, indigenous identity movement, anti-police protests, and community education. In places marked by dictatorship, histories, or economic inequality, hip-hop often serves as the grassroots organizing and cultural survival, blending local rhythm and language with global hip-hop framework. So we must consider, does global spread dilute or expand hip-hop's political power? So as we close, let's consider, how has your understanding of hip-hop shifted from dance style to a cultural movement? Where do you see tensions between authenticity and commercialization? Well, that's it for this module. Make sure you work on your assignments and do your discussion posts. I'll see you next week.